What is the worst team in NBA history? This is something that could spark a lot of debate. On one end, is it the 2012 Bobcats, the 2016, or the 1973 76ers? While these teams are so close together in terms of mediocrity, there's really not a single team that is objectively the worst for most fans in real life. But what if there was actually the end-all, be-all worst team? How would they perform in the NBA? What players could we use to make the worst roster? And how would you fans react to this? This team would be so bad, they would be more suited for the G League than anything else, with it being an absolute pain in the ass to watch them. So without further ado, stick around and enjoy the lore. Let's start off with the basics. No basketball team is complete without a coach. We need to find a coach as an absolute liability. For this, we actually have a very decent candidate here, and it's one of the most prolifically underperforming coaches right now, Doc Rivers. You know, the coach that has caused the once dominant Bucks to slump in terms of defense, and one so bad, Milwaukee fans would like to see get fired. Rivers has a personality that doesn't fit well with everybody. Player polls have listed him among the worst coaches, his reputation has been tarnished, and his other problems like having a severe aversion to playing young players, he's our first piece of the puzzle. The opposite of someone like Greg Popovich, Pat Riley, or Eric Spoelstra. With a coach that prioritizes veterans too much, we need a starting five that reflects Rivers' philosophy. The front court and back court will be banged up. Over 35-year-old players past their prime. But we're not going to make this feel like I'm trying too hard. We're also going to mix in young players. Starting with the point guard, we need somebody who is very bad at what they're supposed to be good at. Playmaking and scoring. Let's go all the way to the free agency market and lock in on Killian Hayes, 23 years old and one of the two not actually aged to oblivion stars. In his last season with the Pistons, Hayes wasn't shooting well at all. His three-point percentage was pure misery, 29.7%, while only averaging 6.9 points per game in 24 minutes of action. As for his passing, he averaged 3.2 turnovers in just 25 minutes, which is a 1.65 ratio. To put this into perspective, these turnover rates are really only reserved for players with massive offensive value, say Luka or prime James Harden. 3.2 and 25 would mean that on average, Hayes would turn over every 8 minutes and 3.6 seconds. But the matters are made even worse because of Hayes being bad at the O for a point guard. So first one on the list goes to Killian Hayes. Next is shooting guard, and continuing with the assumption that this team is mostly like the 2020 Warriors and 2016 76ers, let's go for Garrett Temple, who is as cooked as KFC, got stuck in the washing machine for too long, and now is 39.
Garrett Temple here, please, Sned.
Temple's athleticism has absolutely vanished. He has reached a point where he could play 15 minutes and you could actually forget he's on the court. Right now for the Raptors, his stats are basically almost empty. 0.3 points, 0.3 rebounds, 0.3 assists. It's pretty clear that in no way he should be a starting caliber player. But let's say Rivers had a massive brain lapse and got even more convinced all players, no matter what, should be starting. Temple would probably just be meme-worthy at this point, the pinnacle of being on such a bad team that I'll give a funny name later. He would just be on the team for vibes. In summary, for the guards, you have a PG who can't shoot, is only an average defender, and can't pass, and a shooting guard that would plummet the team's advanced metrics. But we still got 3 more positions left, and in theory, if we had a great center or some 2 good forwards, we could still salvage something. But let's take the salvages away and go to small forward. But this time, we're not going to go for the absolute old heads. Let's mix it up a little bit. How about we go to the sweet spot, someone not too old, but not too young. Let's factor in 32-year-old Otto Porter Jr. While he's retired and struggled with so many injuries that have essentially derailed him from the league, including one that was season-ending, and was on a max contract for the Nets in 2017 that was worth $106 million for 4 years, we just got convinced the team staff that this injury-prone man is worth yet another max contract. Good enough, he comes back to the NBA. OPJ's effectiveness in terms of production would also be near zero. He averaged just 2.6 points per game, along with 1.9 rebounds in 11 minutes in his final season. Per 36, that is just 8 points and 6 rebounds. I bet his potential is going to be a lot worse, of course, because he's been out of the league for quite some time and is starting to pick up some rust. OPJ back on in a max contract, this team's going to have a large elephant in the room now. For power forwards, we need someone exactly 34 to keep up with Rivers' philosophy, as I said earlier, and to make this team even more unique. Here is Derek Williams, one example of an NBA draft bust. He relied a lot on his athleticism and never got proper starting minutes even early in his career. He would be too small to guard BOPFs and too slow to guard SFs. He's going to have the worst of both worlds. Just like OPJ, he's not in the league right now, so give him the money and boom. You have 2 players that suddenly have to de-rust with unusually high expectations by the staff and Rivers. Three of these players right now, Hayes, Temple, and Williams, they would be treated the same way by defenses. They would be left wide open, they could take their shot, miss, and the opponents get their fast break opportunity. Our last position is at center, and this time I am going for somebody young, but also another one who underperformed the expectations from the draft, James Wiseman. While it has been unfortunate, especially as a Warriors fan, to see him dealing with injuries over and over again, as well as numerous other setbacks, frick it, we're going for him. Wiseman has poor anticipation. He's often a second lane on rotations, leading to him becoming the no man's land type of guy. Too far to block the shot and too close to stop a potential pass. Alright, with this roster complete, if you were Doc Rivers and delusional, what would you say about this roster? In my opinion, he'd probably go for something like, I like our veteran leadership. He would then proceed to play Temple in starting minutes, then Temple would probably score only 5 points, literally being on the court as a casual exercise at times. You would also have OPJ probably get injured in his first game, being forced to play for 32 because of his poor conditioning being out of the league, and Hayes would keep showing high quality lowlights. Our next step, making the chemistry as bad as possible. Even with a good chemistry, this team would struggle to even play against high-end G League competition. But we want to make this team even worse with bad chemistry, to the point where they actually struggle against even the worst G League team. Doc Rivers would have too much trust in his older veterans, and the younger players, Hayes and Wiseman, would feel alienated. And this would be, regardless of what the scoreboard says, or what is happening from TV. Doc will give the veterans so many minutes, and then they'd probably get into a heated argument with Rivers that doesn't solve things. The problems would only get worse. Hayes would be frustrated in regards to screening. Wiseman, who has been known to slip screens, moving towards the basket but before making contact, would be unprotected. Hayes' feelings would grow more pronounced as his first game with the team progresses. Eventually, as Hayes commits yet another turnover, let's say he displays his feelings by throwing his hands up. Hayes wouldn't trust Wiseman anymore, and thus Hayes would begin refusing to pass to Wiseman by quarter 2. And then in the locker room, you have lots of jealousy. You have Williams and Temple, who are on minimum contracts, glancing on the contract that OPJ is about to sign. They know they have to hold it in, but once it's all said and done, well, they're going to be pissed internally that a player of this, quote, caliber deserved a max contract. Next, when OPJ then starts dealing with pain, he'll then ask for a sub due to, another quote, load management. This team would hide the glaring flaws and would try to look as good as they possibly can, but it wouldn't work out in the end, especially after the first game. Speaking of hiding flaws, once again, Rivers would make a statement in the post-game interviews. He would always downplay, saying stuff like, we know the system needs just a little bit more adjustments. A little bit? A little. The system was broken because of the roster in the first place, and the players would have given up by game 3, so they wouldn't be able to mentally convince them they should make changes. The players know internally that they're part of a horrendous squad. The reaction from fans, who would see this happening in real time, well, they would be furious. You might wake up to see your neighbor got so pissed, they broke a window and they woke you up. Or a fan of the team launching an absolute mega rant on the subreddit of the team. If you made a kid become a fan of this team, and they watched, they would quit idolizing them almost immediately. That kid would probably just find another sport. The final thing that would solidify the team as the absolute worst of all time, they would not have the work ethic to win. And honestly, it would be pointless to even be like Kobe at this point because of how bad the roster is. While Hayes does have a good work ethic, and maybe Wiseman to some extent, albeit slightly off-putted due to what happened over the years, OPJ would treat this team like a spa. A place to rest, chill, have fun, and drink, just casually reducing this team's hope of winning. The paycheck would be enough for him to not even try. He would certainly be here for the money, and not for the training. And then Temple would see all of this, and then try to work out as hard as he could. But then he has another problem. He's not going to be able to beat his 39-year-old legs. No amount of training would fix the situation. This would pretty much make Temple stuck in a loop. Whenever he would try to train aggressively, his legs would give out. He loses motivation, gets it back when the team loses more and more, and the cycle continues. Until eventually, he might ask for a trade. OPJ would love parties more than the game itself. The team would then become so filled with vibes, they would just forget about practice anyway.
When you just talk about practice, we sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise, we're in here talking about practice.
And then once he posts about a situation on an outlet, the drama which had already been caused by players just gets more amplified, burning even more gasoline into the fire that had been sparked over and over for weeks, then months. Other NBA YouTubers would start talking about the situation. ESPN would publish yet another news report, and we would be talking about this team from now on. So, you know how at least a few of the plays that would have played out in the first game with this team? It is only a fraction of what would happen next. It would just be loss after loss, with wins being so uncommon they would feel like championships. Oh wait, The vibes would be so bad they wouldn't care if they won anyway. In terms of a potential record, this team would easily break the record for the least amount of wins in a season. Saying that they would win 5 games is actually quite a generous statement. Realistically, assuming that the squad occasionally has their moments where they actually cooperate well and play decent, I'd say they go 3-79. That's in the best case scenario. But let's say for some reason every single player on that starting 5 has no trade clause, meaning they cannot get out of the hellhole that has been created with the help of Rivers. If their confidence was already shot by game 5, by game 25 it would be so bad the word confidence would cease to exist for the players that don't care about the vibes. At game 82, that word would feel like it was erased from the dictionary. There is a legit chance that this team goes 0-82, would struggle in even the G League, would fold playing against collegiates, and top high school prospects would give a hard run for their money. They would not get out of the confidence block unless a once-in-a-blue-moon event occurs. The team would also have record-breakingly low offensive and defensive ratings. Their leading scorer in OPJ would score 11 points per game before he gives in to his game-by-game struggles to stay afloat. That would mean their new best scoring option later in the season would be an unretired Williams or the liability in Hayes. The ratings that this team would achieve in terms of offense would pretty much clock in below a score of 90, way below even the average for the worst offensive team at any given point. The team's overall turnover rates, as well as offensive rebounding rate, free throw rate, and effective field goal percentage, they would look like they came from a 2K simulation. They would become like a fast break generator for the opposing team by turning it over too much and missing early in the shot clock. And then you go to the defensive ratings, and yikes. If you ask me to tell you what is the worst statistical part about this team, it's on D. With the league average defensive rating being 114.8, this team would nearly hit the 130s. With Hayes gambling for steals too much and regularly being out of position, a 39-year-old Temple that can no longer keep up with players 15 years younger, OPJ having too much vibes and being fragile, and Wiseman's bad anticipation and defensive IQ, it's a recipe for a hilarious disaster. Actually, the disaster would be so large, the recipe would overfill the book. They would need an entire encyclopedia that they would have to erase just for it to fit. Capping it all off, this team's gonna simply be called Team U, because it sounds like Timu, the icing on the cake for the absolute chaos I have built. And also, the U in Team U, it would stand for unfortunate. It is the one word that I can use to describe this team. It is absolutely crazy just how bad an NBA team could be using puzzle pieces that we actually have right now in the league. And that has led to some very, very creative results. Now I wonder, imagine if we put Team U in my NBA in 2K26. That's even more funny. Anyways, I'm some random Xander. This is it for the video, and remember guys, stay random. Goodbye.